Hello, strangers. It's been a while, I know, and happy Thanksgiving to those celebrating. Today's episode dives into a deeply disturbing case, one that hasn't received much attention around the world. I've tried to gather the most accurate information available, and because the story is quite heavy, this video will be split into two parts. I hope you find this episode informative, and as always, don't forget to like and subscribe and leave a comment. And now, let's begin.
Welcome, my son. Welcome to the machine. Where have you been? It's alright, we know where you've been. So
This series presents information based in part on theory and conjecture. The producer's purpose is to suggest some possible explanations, but not necessarily the only ones, to the mysteries we will examine.
Usually, when you hear the word serial killer, your brain immediately zooms to America. The whole concept of serial killer is basically a state's invention. From the 1960s anyway. Before that, people who killed repeatedly didn't have a tittle little label. Jack the Ripper wasn't called a serial killer, he was just Jack, doing horrors in the fog. But to get why the label exists, and why America became the brand ambassador for mass murderers, we've got to roll back to the 1960s and early 2000s, the golden age of panic. Ed Kemper, Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, John Wayne Gacy, Zodiac, the whole cursed lineup. Hollywood turned them into pop culture, monsters, documentaries, series, fanboys, fan edits, the whole disgusting circus. And here's the thing, because America kept hyping its killers, a lot of people forget that the rest of the world has its own nightmares too. Some countries don't glorify their monsters, which means the stories stay buried, but buried doesn't mean gone. Today's episode goes into one of those buried nightmares, a case with barely any coverage, barely any noise.
Полезный и питательный, детский, шоколадный, кофейный, батончики, фу!
Volgotsky District, a tiny, frosty corner in the southeast of Arkhangelsk Oblast, a place where everyone knows everyone, where the biggest weekly scandal is a fox sneaking into a farmer's yard, the kind of place where babushkas cook borscht for 5 days straight and no one complains. But spring 2016 hit differently. Something cold slithered into the quiet, and the children started to vanish. It began with Misha, 11 years old. Red wool jumper, school trousers still dirty from PE. Last seen walking home through a forest. Shortcut he'd taken 1,000 times. He never made it to his front door. People told themselves it was a runaway situation. Maybe he got lost. Maybe he wandered off. The police searched. 2 weeks later, Anya, 13, blue padded coat, a pink backpack with a cracked Hello Kitty badge. She was walking to her grandma's. The path was familiar to her, except she disappeared half away between two houses. By November, the air is basically tasted like fear. Parents walk their kids everywhere, even it was just across the street. Night lamps got installed on roads that never needed lighting. People stopped trusting the woods. Then came Sarayosha, 10, brown beanie, puffer jacket, school shoes with laces always undone. He vanished near an abandoned shed by the tree line. Locals whispered about wolves, human traffickers, and escaped convicts, forest spirits, and even local legends. Anything except the truth standing right in front of them. Over the next 2 months, 4 more kids will disappear, each one dressed for the cold, each one following a normal route that taken their whole life. And every time, search teams search through the snow, finding nothing but footprints that suddenly stopped, as if the ground simply erased the children. The town was in a panic. Rumors spread faster than the winter wind. People talk about a wolf the size of a cow, and a satanic cult lurking in the forests, a hunter who'd lost his mind, or a ghost of a dead Soviet soldier selling kids to build his lost platoon. Everyone had someone to blame, but no one had answers. Parents barricaded their houses after sunset. Hunters patrolled the outer woods. Schools shortened their hours. Police set up road checkpoints. And still, the children kept disappearing. And the weird thing about this case, the lack of official attention. No reports from Moscow, not even a federal headlines or even a national panic. Nothing. Just a small town screaming into the cold while the rest of the world scrolled past. But not for long.
We'll return after these messages.
Hello friends, S9 is here. I finally made Buy Me a Coffee page. If you want to support the channel and help me level up the work that I do, the link's down below. No pressure at all. Now, let's get back to the video. In the late winter, a group of loggers found a shallow pit under a collapsed tree. At first, it looked like a fox den. Then, one of them noticed fabric, a scarf of a red wool, Misha's jumper. The snow around it started to melt as they dug, and the truth surfaced. The remains of the missing children, layered like someone had been dumping them there for months. Clothes twisted together, bones snapped in ways that weren't from animals. The local police pretended they were ready for something like this, but they weren't. Nobody is. The investigation snapped open overnight. Detectives with unmarked cars, all suddenly appearing like they'd been waiting for someone else to do the dirty work of finding the bodies. The breakthrough came from a tiny detail, a brand of rope used to bind the victims. The fibers were rare, factory specific. Only one guy in the whole district bought that kind of rope. The police knocked on his door, and the nightmare turned out not to be a wolf or a soldier's ghost. It was one man, just a simple man, living right under everyone's nose. You'd think something like this would explode across Russia, but hardly anyone outside Arkhangelsk even heard about it. Even local papers ran a few cold paragraphs. National news gave it a 30-second mention at best. 7 murdered kids, a serial killer hiding in a tiny northern town, and silence. For a case this gruesome, the lack of coverage almost feels supernatural. Some people say authorities wanted to avoid national panic, but the locals say the media didn't care because the town was too small and too poor and not that important for shock value. Wherever the reason, the world moved on quickly, but not in Vygotsky. Thank you all for sticking along with this video. I was your host, S9, and this has been Decode.